And look at that. You know what? It is 9 o'clock on the West Coast. So let's get started with the Vancouver Power BI and Modern Excel user group meetup for Thursday, October 16th. Today, we are going to be exploring monkey tools, but we'll get to that in just a bit because we got a few things that we need to cover off first. So the first thing is a great big thanks to the sponsors that make this happen. Skillwave being a training company that run, which has awesome Excel and Power BI training. If you haven't checked that out, you definitely should. Excelguru is the parent company of Skillwave and also the creator and distributor of Monkey Tools, which is the software that we will be talking about a little bit later on today. Next meetup's coming up. Our next Excel track, we've got Allison Pollicut is going to be coming to talk to us about the simple magic of Go-To Special. I'm looking forward to that. I know this has got actually a lot more feature components that a lot of people think about. So this would be a great session to go and see just how much this can do. And then in a couple of weeks, Faraz Sheikh is going to be joining us. Note the time difference here. We're not going to be at our standard 9 a.m. Pacific. Faraz is joining us from Saudi Arabia, I think. So we're shifting that just a little bit. I haven't got the total topic on this one, but I know it'll be a great topic at any rate. So don't forget to RSVP for those. New in Monkey Tools. We'll be talking about these as I go through a little bit. We'll show some of these things here. I've got a new dimensional values measure monkey that has just been released as of last night. I've also done a bug fix to my 445 calendar boundaries and a bunch of other things that are going into this as well. But we'll take a look at the actual features rather than look at the new feature list here along the way. New product been added into the Skillwave catalog is our Ask Can Anything sessions. You can now subscribe to the Ask Can Anything sessions without subscribing to another course as well. And I've had at least one person that signed up for this. We just did an ACA session yesterday. So this is a lot of fun. Had great questions yesterday, man. Had a full 2-hour session with all kinds of good stuff from the easier side of things to the more complicated side with year-over-year calculations and week-over-week calculations on 445 calendars. Some real good stuff in there. So if you're looking for some coaching, just some place to interact and run ideas fast or get answers to your questions, this is a fantastic product that you should definitely check out. My Excel Fundamentals Academy. If you have people in your organization or yourself that are just looking to sort of fill in a lot of knowledge gaps and get your Excel from a beginner to a good, solid intermediate level, this is a great program. Includes access to the ACA sessions as well as a bunch of training and coaching and a few other things as well. I would definitely advise you to check that one out as well. If you feel you're already past the fundamental side and you're ready to go and start really harnessing Power Query and Power Pivot and Power BI, that is what our Self-Service BI Academy is all about. This one actually includes the Fundamentals Academy and the Ask Can Anything sessions and a whole bunch of other stuff. This is my premier training program. I've got nothing but good feedback about this one here. It also includes your annual license to Monkey Tools. So a lot of good benefits in this stuff. You'll learn a ton. And, I would definitely encourage you to go and check that out. This meetup, along with all meetups, is being recorded. I'm just checking. The recording is running, so that's all good. It will be posted on the Skillwave YouTube channel within 24 to 48 hours of the meetup being done. Once it is posted, we will post on the meetup site, so you got a notification that's ready. Unless, of course, you subscribe to the YouTube channel, then you might even find about it that way first. It might beat me by about 30 seconds or so when I post them, but just be aware that is where it will be done. I just need about 24 hours just to sort of process it and whatever. And yes, smash the like button. All caps on the smash, Joseph. Beautiful. There you go. It amazes me that we don't have more likes given the fact that we've been running this thing for so long. I just don't know how we don't get enough subscribers for the regular content that we push out there. But hey, that's a whole different ballgame. At any rate, smash the like button, share it with others. We'd love to have that happen. Final thing I want to say on this section before I turn it over to Joseph is if you would like to come and speak to our meetup group, we are always looking for new speakers here. We'll take content on Excel. We'll take content on Power BI. We'll take anything in the Power Platform stack. We just love it when people come and share with us the cool things that they're doing on our platform here. Crowd is really friendly. We love to get people in touch to get you out here. So if you're interested in coming and speaking with us and sharing it, we love first-time speakers. Just fill out the little survey link that you have here. This is also downloadable. The slide deck is downloadable from the meetup site, and we would love to get you on our show. And on that note, Joseph, that is what I have for my intro stuff. Do you want to talk a little bit about what's new in Power BI? Not this month, but last month?
Ish, yeah, sure. Let's do it. I will steal the screen from you and we can jump into it.
Perfect.
There we go. Okay, so yeah, welcome everyone to the October What's New in Power BI at the Vancouver Power BI Modern Excel user group. As Ken alluded to, there hasn't been an October release of What's New in Power BI just yet, so I'm going to go back over one of the features from last month that was made generally available. This is the Tyndall view. The tabular model definition language view in Power BI. And this is something that I have talked about previously as part of the What's New in Power BI, particularly when it first came out into preview into Power BI desktop. And I think one of those first few months, I did a pretty, maybe not a deep dive, but I spent quite a bit of our time of What's New in Power BI going over Tyndall, some of its capabilities, what it is, where it is in Power BI desktop. And since then, I realized I've not really gone in to much detail to look at some of the improvements that have happened. So since there's no October release, I think it makes sense for us to go through and just see sort of what's been new in the Tyndall view for the last year-ish, we'll say, some of the new improvements that have come in. But also because it's generally available now. So anyone who's downloading Power BI Desktop, the Tyndall view will be there. And if you are in Power BI a lot and developing semantic models, building lots of reports, it's definitely a feature that you should be aware of. So there was a dedicated blog post from Microsoft to announce the Tyndall view being generally available. And if we scroll down here, we see since its preview at the beginning of this year, there's several key enhancements, some of which we will review in the next 15 minutes or so. But what I want to navigate to is we have links to two further documentations, the work with Tyndall view in Power BI Desktop, which I'll jump into in just a second, and the Tyndall view for Power BI Desktop preview. So this bottom blog post I reviewed probably in January or February of this year, but let's jump into this work with Tyndall view in the Power BI Desktop. Okay. So I guess to start with, what is this tabular model definition language and why is it important for Power BI developers? So what it allows us to do is rather than using the interface in Power BI Desktop to update our semantic model with things like defining measures, the format string of our measures, calculated columns, or even the tables that we load into our semantic model, like the Power Query definition with the transformation steps. Do we mark it as a date table? What are the relationships between those tables? Previously, we've done that using sort of the GUI with like the classic clicky, draggy, droppy, using the ribbon, using the different views on the left-hand side. And what the Tyndall view allows us to do is that we can use code and we can define or edit or update those things programmatically. And so the key advantages, as outlined in the top of this blog post, is enhanced development efficiency. Obviously, instead of clicking and dragging and dropping and waiting for things to load, we can just define it with code. Increase usability with scripting, sharing, and reusing these scripts. So if we define something like a date table in one Power BI report, we can just copy and paste that code into a different Power BI report, and we don't have to start from scratch of building out all the logic of our date table. And it gives us more control and transparency over our data model. So why don't I jump into my Power BI report, and we can just take a moment here to look and see exactly what I'm talking about. So over on this left-hand side, we have all of the views available to us in Power BI. Right now, we're in this report view, which has our report canvas, where we create all of the visuals of our report with all the different pages. We have the table view, which is where we can see a preview of all of the tables in our data model and some of the data there. We have our model view, which is where we can see the relationships between those tables that make up our semantic model. We have our DAX query view, which I've looked at and used in quite a few of the What's New in Power BI over the last probably 2 years now. And now we have this Tyndall view, which has been in Power BI Desktop again since January. Now it's generally available. So what Tyndall view allows us to do, if I just open up a new script here, We can see in some of this preview code, if you want to learn more about Tyndall, there's a blog post here. But one thing I can start with is I can take my entire semantic model. So all of the tables, all of the measures, all of the columns, everything really that underlies our Power BI report. And I can just drag that from this data pane on the right-hand side, drag it into our Tyndall view. And I can see all of this code, all of this information that describes exactly what makes up and is included in our semantic model. So that's 1,200 lines of code. We could work with this, and there are some ways that it sounds intimidating, but we could work with it. But for the demo today, I'm just going to focus on one of the tables within our semantic model, which is our fact stats. So here we can see things like our table name, the measures that are contained within our model. We see we have 4 measures, I think. Then we see the columns that belong to that table. And if we go down to the bottom, we can even see the Power Query code that defines that table in there. Okay. So along with dragging tables into our Tyndall view, we could just from our table drag like columns if we wanted to, or we could drag just measures. Notice when I try and drag a measure onto an existing script, it automatically pops up a new script for us. So we can just work with one or all of the items in our semantic model, and this works with control clicking as well. So if I grab a few different measures and a few different columns and drag them in, then all of them go onto the Tyndall script there, and we can start working with them. But let's go back just to our fact stats table. Before I start doing things with code in the Tyndall view, why don't we check out what it looks like sort of in the front end, because that can make it a little bit easier for us to see. So if I open up the Power Query editor and I look at our fact stats table and make it a little bit bigger, we see this is a simple query. We just refer to our source query here. And then all I'm doing is selecting some columns, or I'm removing other columns. I'm just selecting 5 columns from our source query, and then I'm loading that into our Power BI report. From the front end, for our fact stats table in our data model, again, we see that we have 4 measures here. We have total cost and average price change we'll be looking at. And for total cost, one thing that I want to do just before we jump into Tyndall is I want to format this as a currency to 2 decimal places, and we'll see why in just a moment. So if we go back into the Tyndall view, why don't we take that fact stats table again? Why don't we open up a new one just to be sure? There we go. So if we look here, down at the bottom where we define the table, we see the same code that we saw in Power Query. All we're doing is we're referring to our source query, and then we are removing, or we're selecting columns from a table, these 5 columns. And then further up here, we see our total cost measure. We now have this format string definition within our measure, as well as the DAX code that defines the measure. We're just summing the cost column from our fact stats table. So all these things that we see in the front end, we can, if we're familiar with how we define the format string on the ribbon, or if we use the Power Query editor, some of these things in the Tyndall view will be familiar to us. It's just a case of getting used to looking at it in code as opposed to using a GUI. But what we can do now is we can start to update some of these things, not in the Power Query editor and not in the report canvas, but we can do it directly from this Tyndall view. So if I want to take this format string for our total cost measure as an example, I can copy it, and maybe I want to format our average price change measure in the same way. So I can just open up a new line and paste it in there. And we get an error because of the indent. So we can line that up. And then down here at the bottom, maybe we want to add a few more columns. Instead of choosing 5 columns from our source query, if we want to add 2 more, like we want to add form and Dream Team count, I think was one of the columns there. So what this allows us to do is, we've updated the format string of one of our measures. We've updated the Power Query. We can hit preview up here on the top to see what these changes could look like. And this is really the power of the Timdal view, is that rather than updating something and it updates live and maybe we like it and maybe we don't, we can preview the changes here. And there are a few different ways we can look to do this. We can toggle between the next changes using these arrows in the preview mode. So here we can see on the right-hand side, we get this comparison. We've added form and Dream Team count that don't exist in our current semantic model. And if I go to the next one, we see we've added a format string under this measure. One of the features that I think is really handy is we can hit this toggle unchanged regions. So this sort of like collapses everything in our in this Timdal script for our semantic model, and all we're seeing is where the changes are. So you see we skip from line 618 to 700. We've hidden 81 lines, and we've just hidden all the things that haven't changed in our semantic model. So this helps us quickly identify just the changes that we've made. And we also have the ability to toggle inline versus the comparison view. So I personally like that comparison view better, but if you wanted to, we could show these changes inline, and we can see we've gone from our removed other column step has been updated to include these two extra columns, and we can toggle that back and forth. One thing I think is cool as well is that if we do make changes while we have this preview window popped open, like if I deleted this format string section, we get this note that says your preview is out of date, and we can update our preview. And now we can toggle back and forth between here, but I do want to keep this change, so I can update our preview again to make sure that that is captured. But I think that was everything that I wanted to demo. So I think once I've done that and we've seen the preview and we're happy with what it looks like, we're adding the format string here, we're updating those columns in our Power Query, I can hit apply, and we see changes applied to our model. So if I go to the average price change up here, now we can see that it's formatted as a currency to 2 decimal places, just like our total cost measure is, but I haven't updated our total minutes or total points measures. And one thing you might notice is that we don't have those new columns in this table. We don't have that form and Dream Team columns added. And if I go to the table view, we can see here. And so this is where we do need to refresh to bring that data in. Although we've updated the definition of our model, we haven't actually brought that data into our semantic model yet. And this actually ties into another recent update to Power BI, that when we want to refresh a specific table in our semantic model, we have the ability to refresh both the schema and the data, which is how it's always worked previously, with just like the one refresh option. We can refresh just the schema or just the data. So if I refresh just the schema in this case, we see that we have added those 2 columns because we've added them to our within our Timdal view. We've added them to the definition of this fact stats table, but there's no data. We know that we've essentially added like the metadata of the schema, but no data has been loaded. So if I right click here and refresh the data this time, this is where we can actually start bringing data in, and we see that there are actual values in those columns now. So that's something to be aware of when we're updating the definition of tables. We can still update that, do that all programmatically. And what's nice is we can update all our Power Query steps and the definition of those tables without needing to refresh our entire data set or refresh the tables. But if we do want to see that data reflected, we do have to refresh the data to bring that in. So that's gone through sort of a deep-ish dive into the Timdal view. But just before I hand it back to Ken, there is one more thing that I wanted to review in the blog post that I think was really useful for me to go through. And down here at the bottom, we see this common use cases for the Tyndall view. So some of these things we've reviewed today in this brief demo, and some of the things we might have looked at previously. But some of the scenarios is I've named all my tables in my semantic model with prefixes like dim underscore and fact underscore, and I'd like to remove these prefixes without having to manually go in and click all the tables. We can do that in Tyndall view now with just a find, dim underscore, delete it, find, fact underscore, delete it, hit apply, and then all the names of our tables have been updated. So that's really handy. Another scenario is I need to modify the Power Query expression of my table without triggering a refresh. Again, this is something we can do in the Tyndall view that we've just seen. I updated that Power Query M code, but it didn't actually force a refresh of my data model. I had to manually go and do that after the fact. So it's nice if we want to update things but don't want to wait for a big long refresh if it's hitting a large data source. We can switch the storage mode from direct query to import or vice versa. We can back up a semantic model definition before any changes. All these things we've seen that we can do in the Tyndall view, and it either makes things that weren't previously possible in Power BI desktop, or it makes things that were previously possible but maybe really difficult and a little bit convoluted or inefficient to do. It makes it a lot easier. So again, if you are working in Power BI every day, or if you just build reports in Power BI occasionally and you want to get a little bit better and make your workflow more efficient, I would definitely check out the Tyndall view, check out this documentation, check out the blog posts, and it's changing the way that I'm working with Power BI every day. So that was a little bit different of a what's new in Power BI for this month, but at this point, I've all wrapped up my Tyndall update, which again is now generally available in Power BI desktop, and I'm ready to pass it back to Ken for
Awesome.
His update for Monkey Tools.
Thanks, man. Thanks for doing this again. And I know it's always harder on you when there isn't an update to talk about, but well done. That's awesome. Cool deal. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just going to reshare my screen here, and we'll talk a little bit about Monkey Tools. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm just going to drop into the chat a quick little survey. So if you can click on that and go to menti.com. It's incredibly technical and incredibly long. There's all of 3 questions. The first and last one are a single option choice, and the middle one you can choose as many as you like. But this will just give me sort of a little bit of a background as to where you're coming from with Monkey Tools, and we can take a look at what's happening there. And I can see that so far I've got 1 person voted here, and I know there's a few more of you in the chat than just that. So the other thing that I will mention is that as I am going through, sorry, Joseph, do you have a question? I see your hand is up.
No, sorry, I clicked the wrong button.
Okay, fair enough. That works. No questions is easy questions. The other thing that I'll mention along the way here is that I do have the chat window open on the right-hand side here. So if you have questions as we go along, please don't hesitate to jump them into the chat. I am very versed at watching the chat while I'm doing my presentations, and actually prefer to answer questions as we go along here. So let me just check something here real quick. I want to make sure that y'all can get into the second question here, and that it's not actually forcing you to wait for me. And of course I clicked the wrong thing here. I can see that I do not have any answers on number 2 here. You know what? I'll tell you what. Let me present this thing here and see if that actually helps. And of course I've got it on the wrong screen. So yeah, I'm going to present from there. It is forced. Okay, so basically the first part that we got on this one here. So most of you lean towards Excel first. A few of you depend on the task. That's fine. Cool. Let's go for the next one here. Which parts of Excel do you use? I love this. I love when I'm working with an audience who goes through and uses all parts of Excel. That's always good. it's really interesting to me, even when I talk to the Excel team about specific features, and they'll ask, like, well, what do you need in this particular place? I'm like, I need everything. And like, well, I know, but what do you want to focus on first? I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, I need everything, because when I build a solution, I use all parts of Excel, right? So, so here you go. Cool. So we got most of you, everybody pretty much uses tables and pivot tables. I'm actually surprised that not everybody voted for formulas in some respect, but that's all good. Anyhow, no big deal. Let's go and move on to the next one. So the last part here is just around Monkey Tools. Tell me how much experience you actually have working with Monkey Tools. I love that. 3 votes are right off the bat for the bananas. Excellent. Let's see where the rest of you come in on this one. Some of you have never heard of it. Okay, cool. In that case, that's going to drive a little bit of how I approach the presentation here. We'll just wait for a couple of votes on this one here if we can to get the last one. So if you haven't voted yet, please drop those in there. Cool. Another never heard of it. All right. Well, in that case, hopefully I can change a little bit and show you some cool things here. Oh, Scott is dropping the hammer. Anyone not using it is bananas. All right, there you go. Love that. Like, dude, I need to get you out actually sending emails to people and whatnot on this, I tell you. All right, so thank you for voting. Appreciate that. So here we go. Let me talk a little bit about what Monkey Tools actually is. And this will sort of help give you a little bit of a framework for those of you who haven't used it before, what it actually does. So Monkey Tools is an add-in to Excel. It is a freemium add-in. What that means is there is a free version, and if you decide that you like it enough and want advanced or access to the more advanced features, you can purchase a pro license as well. Our target audience is people who want to save time building Excel solutions. I mean, who doesn't, right? People who also build models with Power Query and Power Pivot, but you'll notice that all of these are an and/or kind of thing. People who need to audit models that are received from others. Okay, so these are some of the main core things that that Monkey Tools actually does. My guiding principles, just as far as software goes here, because this is a software product you install, my number one thing here is a do no harm philosophy. I don't do stuff in your workbook unless you ask. This is really, really important to me, and honestly, oh wow, look, nice comment from Heather here. Just got the authorization to go and get their full subscription again is totally worth it. Felt crippled the last few months with their free version. Well, there you go. Awesome. And yeah, you're right, Heather. Thank goodness your previous solutions did not break. Let's talk about that as well. So the guiding principles, we don't do anything to your workbook unless you ask. And this is something that I am seeing changing from philosophies of other companies like, I don't know, maybe Microsoft, where they're starting to put in features that you don't necessarily want and you can't turn them off. So anywhere that I actually go and put in something that changes the default behavior of the Excel, I'll give you the opportunity to opt out. We do have one installer, one version. It installs without admin rights, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can get it past IT, because sometimes they have blockers and whatever else as well. But you do not need IT at your desktop in order to install it. It should install without admin rights at all. We do like to give a high value of free features. We do give you more and better stuff with your pro license as well, though. We also like to learn from user choices along the way here. That's something that's important to me. I like setting defaults so that they make sense. The other thing is we have no license lock-in. So if you are working on a pro license and you decide at some point in time that you want to go off of pro and you want to go back to free, you can absolutely do that. You can opt back into pro when you want to do it. Totally up to you. So let's talk a little bit about the licensing here. And I see lots of comments coming in about the everybody loving the BiblioMonkey feature from this. We will definitely talk about that one as we go through. So the licensing for Monkey Tools, it's installed. It is licensed on a per named user basis, meaning you buy a license for yourself. You can use that license on up to 3 different computers. My philosophy here is you probably got a computer at work, and who doesn't use Excel at home? And you've probably also got a laptop that you use when you're traveling between work and home. So we really want you to have Monkey Tools available where you are working at any time. The pricing model works like this. I've got a little logo here you'll see on the different slides that I'm going to look at. This little green checkmark list, this is the forever free, the community version. So anything you see that has this on it will work in a free license. We also have a trial of our pro license, which will actually allow you to use the pro features for 2 weeks. There's one asterisk on this. After that, just reverts to free. And we also have a pro license subscription where you can contribute to help us, support the tool and reward the development efforts. You can opt in and out whenever you like from the model. You can find all the details on this one at monkeytools.ca. Now, let's talk a little bit about the features themselves. So the way Monkey Tools works is that we add a new ribbon tab to your Excel when you've actually installed Monkey Tools. And the Monkey Tools ribbon is divided into a few different components, okay? So we have what I like to call convenience features. Convenience features are basically features that I have taken from Excel. They're the native Excel functionality, but I put them all on one tab so you don't have to switch tabs back and forth when you're actually doing things. Because let's face it, when you're building a data model with Power Pivot, the first thing you do is you're going to get data from Power Query, which comes from the data tab. Then you're going to do some data modeling on the Power Pivot tab, and then you're going to do some more stuff. So we're trying to get everything here so you don't have to switch tabs back and forth and really make this kind of a workflow for the serious business intelligence developer. We also have a whole collection of Monkey Tools features, and Monkey Tools features are things that, sorry, Jim, you call that winning, just not having to switch tabs. Cool, I love it. Yeah, Scott, thanks for the comment. The free value or free features are valuable just for the added table functionality alone. We'll definitely take a look at those as well. So the Monkey Tools features, these are ones that I actually wrote. So every one of these is a custom build of some different things that it does. And these also are divided into two different subclasses. We have monkeys and we have sleuths, okay? And basically what the sleuth does is the sleuth looks at your workbook and tries to gain insights from it. The other side here is that we have our monkeys, and our monkeys actually go out and take action and do things in your workbook. So these are the things you would expect to actually go and create something new. But again, they're only going to be called when you actually call them. We don't generally do things behind the scenes without your knowledge, unless I've disclosed to you that that's what's going to happen. And oftentimes for those very, very small cases, this is one of the reasons why people will actually jump on and get the tool is for those things as well. So here is a quick list of the overview of the different features in Monkey Tools. Now, there's a lot. There's more than we're going to be able to go through in an hour. So I'm going to come back to this list a little bit later here and sort of talk about some of these. We'll sort of go through this. I'll give you a guided journey as to what's happening inside the tools here. And if there's anything that we want to look at specifically, we can definitely do that. Again, I'll react to the chat and show you and jump around on these. But before I go any further here, I'm just going to quickly talk about, for those who are familiar with Monkey Tools, what's new over the last year. What we've done in Monkey Tools, we've added center across selection is now on the merge menu. It takes the place of merge and center. Okay, so this is something we've been asking the Excel team to do for, I don't know, 20 years. I finally got tired of waiting, so I said, fine, I'm going to put in my own center across selection. So merge cells is now on a sub menu with center across selection on the top. We added import export functionality for the BiblioMonkey feature. So this is something that there was a high demand here. I know, Scott, you're a big fan of this one because we had discussions about this while I was building it as to how it should work and whatnot. And I know Scott takes advantage of that. I've added a lot more BiblioMonkey tags. I'll show you what some of those look like as we're going through it. I've added a current workbook function and current workbook monkey into the product as well. This allows us to build a current workbook function that replicates what a get data from external workbook looks like, where we actually try to tell you whether you've got tables or ranges and things like that. The standard current workbook or Excel.current workbook function doesn't give you that, where it should. So we've made some attempts to make that work. And as of last night, I have just released the dimensional values measure monkey. This is a brand new feature that I will give you a demo of as well. Not something you're going to use every day, certainly, but it has some good use cases that's going to make things a little bit easier. And as always, we have a plethora of bug fixes, performance enhancements that we're always working on as we go through and do this. So interesting, Eric, your comment on center across selection by default. Yeah, it is awesome. I agree. But you don't even need to retrain your brain, because if you click the merge and center button, well, now it's center across selection, so it actually does it for you, which is brilliant. You don't need. That was actually one of the cool things around this, is that I didn't want this to be I wanted to be impactful, but I didn't want to be something that was invasive, right? We wanted to follow something that made natural sense, so that's why we put it where it is. Okay, and there's obviously lots more. There's a ton of things that we do inside Monkey Tools here. So rather than dive into each of the individual features, because there's so many to talk about here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and I'm going to dive into a demo here. We're going to build some stuff with Monkey Tools. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start right away with, you know what, let's start with this one here. We'll start with a from table or range monkey, and I'm going to show you one of the changes that we make to the experience in working with things is around dealing with tables. So what I'm going to show you right now, this is a free feature. If you are familiar with Excel, you'll know that if you press Control T to create a table, you get this dialog right here. Now, the problem with this dialog is that it doesn't allow you to name your table. So if you go in and you say OK to this, you get a new table called Table 1, and then it drops you onto the table tag. And one of the #1 things we always tell people is go back and rename the table right away. What this should have is a button up the top here that says, or a box up the top to say, what do you really want to call this, to encourage you to name your table up front. This is what happens when you press Control T in Monkey Tools. You actually get this. And this works on the free version, by the way. So I can go and I can actually call this one, oops, let's call it sales. You'll notice that the checkbox for my data has headers is always checked. Okay, in Excel, depending on what you have with numbers, this might not be checked. We can turn off the table filter buttons right here if you want to do that. We can also create a connection-only query. So if I go and say OK to this, creates a table just like normal. There's the table design tab. There's the name of the table. That's cool. If I go and grab this one, for example, I'm going to call this one budgets. I'm going to add a connection-only query to it. Now, this takes a little bit longer, but this is something, honestly, I wish Excel would do by default. Is we've now got a Power Query that reaches out to this table. Notice we don't have one for the first one because I didn't actually ask for that option. Okay. Yeah, Thomas, one thing you mark and refer to the videos for Monkey Tools functions. I have an entire free course for Monkey Tools available at Skillwave, and I'll give you a link to that one a little bit later. And if I forget, please remind me. But so this one here, this is going to be my categories table. Again, you know, I can create a connection-only query if I want to do that. That's fine. I'm not going to bother here. This one, though, tabular data with no headers. In the standard Excel world, this would do what? Does it put a header on it or not? You'll notice in this case here, we actually run some heuristics across this and go, this doesn't look like it has a header because everything's numeric. In the Excel world, I think it actually goes the other direction on this one. It puts the checkbox on it, but on this one, it won't, right? So we look at it and say, look, if everything's text-based or if the first row is text, that's probably a header. But if everything is numeric, it probably isn't. And awesome, I've just lost my mouse because PowerPoint. Hold on a second. There we go. All right. I hate that PowerPoint bug. Anyhow, at this point in time, I'm going to go, and you know what? I'll just say on this one here, my data does not have headers. I'm just going to call this one, let's just call it numeric. And while I'm at this, I'm also going to uncheck the table filter buttons as well. But you'll notice that what this will do, because it doesn't have headers, it will add the headers in there. But because I told it not to put on the filter button up the top here, it's now been turned off because some people prefer that. Okay, so there we go. How does it work with ranges? Well, this is a range of data, right? Let's press Control T using Monkey Tools. It automatically identifies that this does not look exactly the same as everything else. It doesn't have the consistency that would be needed for a table. So it comes back and says, well, what do you want to call it? So we've got something here. I can go and call this one range statement. I can even create a connection-only query. If I want to change this to a different scope, so a sheet name, I could do that. But I'm going to do this right now. And you can see here's range statement. And if I go and take a look at it in Power Query, we've brought the data in. You'll also notice that unlike what Excel would do, if you try to actually read from a named range here, we also do not try and promote the first row to headers because we don't know if that's what you actually want to do here. Power Query just assumes you do, and it pops this first one up, which would actually lose some of the context here. I end up usually having to delete that step. So we don't do that, okay? So that's one of the cool things there. The other thing, of course, providing that you have a dynamic array enabled version of Excel, this will also come up and say, look, we're going to pick you up. This is going to be a dynamic array in this case. This one's trying to pick it up as a table. Let me go this route. Oh, sorry, hang on. This is tabular data with no headers. My bad. So let's go and create this one. This can be a table. That's fine. So tabular. If I go and grab a dynamic array, though, notice it's picking up a named range. It's also picking up the hash reference in here as well. So what does the range RNG default refer to when creating a range? So basically, by default, what I do is I actually preface all of my, I don't preface table names because I usually think that those are supposed to be written in English. Ranges I preference with RNG, which is short for range. Arrays I preface with ARY. This is a programming nomenclature that I actually use for these things. If you don't like that though, here's what's kind of interesting around this, right? So if I go and say Control T on this, you'll notice that it picks up the preface, but you'll notice that it's also highlighted, okay? Right now, if I just press Enter, this will actually go and should apply it, okay? Nope, it's already defined, right? We have one here. So let's go take a look. Name Manager. There is the name, ARY, okay? So I'm gonna delete this for a second. And I'm going to show you that with Monkey Tools, in our options monkey here, we have some global options. Now, you'll notice I actually switched this one really quick here, but if you want to use the default Control T behavior, you can check this box. The interesting part around this one is that when I showed you what happens in the classic Control T, I actually pressed Control L because that's the original control list instead of control table, right? So this allows me to show you the old version as well as the new version. In this case here, though, I can also define my custom named range prefaces. And in this one, if I want to say ARY, or maybe I want to call it, I don't know, let's call it DARY because this is a dynamic array. I'm going to close this. When I now go to apply this, notice that it says DARY, but this time it is not selected. Okay, the cursor is after it. Why? Well, because if you've told me that you want a preface, you always want that preface. So this is where I'm expecting you're just going to type in anything else you want. I don't want to have you grab the mouse to change the selection. So if you haven't given me a preface, I put one in, but it's all selected. So you can just type over and replace it and then hit enter. We'll actually close the form and apply it. If you have given me one, I put the cursor after that so you can just type it. So my goal here is to try and make this as efficient as possible for you. The other thing I want you to know about this one here is that all of this is available in the free version of Excel. It also works with your get data. You want to name it? We'll name it before you create your Power Query. Sorry, data. Okay. This is now going to launch it and create the Power Query for me. Boom, there we go. We're right in there, ready to go. Okay, so this is really kind of a nice little thing here. One of the reasons that I actually advise people to never ever use the standard get data from a range that hasn't been set up as a table is that you can't name it first. Monkey Tools allows you to step on top of that process and actually do your naming up front. Okay, and again, this is a free feature. On the other hand, because it is something we overwrite the Excel defaults, in the options monkey under global options, you can turn every bit of this off. Okay, to go back to using the individual pieces. You can also customize what do you want to happen for from table or range experience, from insert table buttons, Control T, Control L, table filters. All of this stuff here can be set up to default the way that you actually want to use it. You'll also notice use the default merge and center menu on the alignment group. Now this is off right now. Let me show you what this actually means. If I grab this information here and I want to center this across, actually let's do all three rows. If I go back to the home tab, center selection will center across the selection. These cells are not merged, as you can see by the ability to click on the individual pieces here. Indeed, the data is still living in this area here. There is center across selection. Okay. There is merge and center. So that's the default button that you have here. The other thing that I will let you know about this, center is spelled correctly unless you are using an American version of Excel. If you have your default language set to US English, we will misspell center for you as ER so that you guys can have it actually spelled incorrectly the way that Americans like to have it, okay? But for the rest of the world, we spell center properly with RE, okay? So just a kind of a nice little thing to sort of make it, a little bit more, your own, I guess, if you like in the grand scheme of things. So, Heather says, use a table prefix on tables you're loading as connections. Then I know those tables are imported from the Excel file and I don't output the same table. Cool. Yeah, good answer. Awesome. So there you go. So this is the from table or range monkey. It's built in behind the scenes. It does things, but it is the way that tables should work, in my opinion. It is something that Excel should have done a long time ago, but never did. So we just take care of it for them. Okay, so that's one of the first features, and I have a lot of people that install Monkey Tools, the free version, simply to get this. Okay. One of the other cool things about Monkey Tools, though, this is a pro feature for reference, but if I go and I take a look at this table here, which is called budgets, and I have a query here that is called budgets. Does anybody know what happens if I have a Power Query that's pointing to a table and I rename the table? What happens to the Power Query? Does it still work or does it break? What do you think, guys? So throw me something in the chat. Does it still work or does it break if I rename the table here? It breaks. Okay, cool. So check this out. I'm going to go here. I'm going to rename this one. I'm going to call this budget. Okay. And now I'm going to go over to my budgets query. And you'll notice that it's been updated here and it still works. Now, this is a Monkey Tools Pro feature. If you are not on the Pro version, it will not do this work for you. Okay, this is one of those areas that we just add things up a little bit nicer. But if you're on the Pro feature, we actually update your Power Query so that they actually still work when you rename a table. So just kind of a cool little fun thing there to make your life a little bit easier along the way. All right, now. Let me see here. What should I go into next? Oh, I don't know. How about we go into a let's try this one here. We'll go into a production forecast for a second. I think this is the one that I'm actually looking for. Nope, this is not the one I'm looking for. So let's try this one here instead. So all right, cool. This is the one I'm after. Okay, so what I'm looking at right now is I'm looking at a worksheet where somebody has gone and done some work, and they've done one of my favorite things is they've sent me a file that has a whole bunch of #div0 errors in it. Now, I'm not a big fan of this kind of thing. This makes me feel like the work is unpolished and unfinished, and I would really like to go and fix this. There are obviously a variety of ways that I could do this, but I'm going to do the cheap and easy way right now, which is wrapping this in an if error statement. I mean, truly, I should actually be testing the denominator, but whatever, that's a different thing. But here's the other thing, though, right? Like when you look at the formula that's showing up here, round, R8 divided by the absolute R8, comma 3. If I go in and I move down this table here, you'll notice that we actually get to a subtotal function. So this one's a little bit different. If I move down here, this is another subtotal. If I move down, we're back to the original formula. We've got another subtotal. And down the very end here, I've got S15 minus S26. So I have 3 different styles of formulas running through in this. And I want to wrap all of these in if error. Now, the reality here is that trying to do this manually would be a lot of work. And this is where I'm going to introduce you to something called our BiblioMonkey. So for people who haven't seen this before, what BiblioMonkey is it's a database that we build into Monkey Tools. You can find it right over here on the BiblioMonkey button here. It will open as an empty workbook or an empty database to begin with. Notice mine is quite full. I've got a lot of stuff inside here. But one of the things that I actually have is I have an error handler here for if error equals blank and if error equals 0. And I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to show you how this works first, and then I'll show you what it actually looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this entire column right here, and I'm going to go right click, insert from BiblioMonkey, formulas. We're going to go and take a look at this error handler. We're going to put in if error, comma 0. And it's going to go and it's going to update everything so that it's showing me zeros. And you think, okay, well, that's cool, Ken, but I mean, I could have pasted values like that, except that if you look, it's actually wrapped all of these things. All the original formulas have been wrapped in if error, comma 0. And if I go down and I take a look, there's the rounding formula has been wrapped. There's the subtotal formula has been wrapped. There's another one. These guys are all the rounding. This is the subtotal, and this one here is the S1 or S15 minus S26. So how did I actually go about building this? What I did is I grabbed this, said Control C. I went into BiblioMonkey, and I said, what I would like to do is I would like to add a new item, and I'm going to add myself a new formula. And inside this, I said, okay, cool. So this is going to be a formula. I'm just going to store it in my formulas here, and I'm just going to do a demo if error. I can give it a description, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste this one right here. So here's the formula. But the thing is that I don't actually want to put this into every cell here. What I'm actually looking at is I'm saying this is what the original formula was that was in the cell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this and say, let's put in the cell contents. So when we go and we actually put this in a cell, we're going to say take whatever the cell contents is, we'll strip off the equal sign, and we're going to wrap that in if error, comma 0. Okay. So I'm just going to go and save this. So this is called demo if error. Exit. So if I go and take a look at all these subtotals here, if I now want to go and do this one, right click, insert from BiblioMonkey, formula. Here is my demo if error. It will now go, grab my subtotal 9, wrap it in the if error statement, and it does this for every single one of these along the way. So this is a really, really handy thing for storing some patterns that you use regularly. And I'm sure all of us have certain formulas like if error, others that we would actually apply to different things. The other cool thing, if you didn't pick it up on this, when I highlighted this entire range, some of these formulas their cells were blank, so the blank ones just get ignored. We're only wrapping contents that actually has active content in place. Right? So that's the first part of this. Make that one nice and easy. I'm also going to show you how complex this one can get. So I have a particular format here or formula here that I use to drive forecasts with overrides. Okay, and I'll put the formula in place here. So if we go insert formula, this is a volume forecast with override. And it says, okay, what do you want to apply it to? So we're going to grab this. Actually, let me see if I can grab a bigger range on this one here. There we go. So we'll grab that range. Okay. The global increase that we're working with here, that's going to be my global volume increase. So it's going to apply 5% to whatever the number is in the monthly units, which is here in this area here. Okay. So notice this is fully relative. This one's absolute. This range is absolute as well. The monthly override percentage is here. What this formula does is it says, if there is a value here, I would like you to multiply this by 1 plus this. If there is no value here, I'd like you to multiply this by 1 plus this one here. Okay, so we're overriding it, but if it's blank, we just use the global. Everything here has been set up with absolute and relative references. I'll show you the tags for this afterwards, but when I inject it, it now goes and puts all of these things in here. And we can see it's using a let function that has some variables defined. So it's, not the easiest function in the world potentially if you didn't write it, but you can see why I might get tired of rewriting this on a regular basis. And this is a formula that I use all the time when I'm building these kind of forecasts. So it's nice to have this template all set up so I don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. Notice the absolute reference here, relative, and applied to the entire range that I set it up as. What does it actually look like? Keep in mind what you see here. Let's go and take a look at it inside our formula area. So the actual formula itself, when I go and take a look at it, looks like this. There's the let, we've got the vol global, that's this, but then we've also got some tags in this one. Enter the global increase, enter the monthly over. How I created these, I just copied this, grabbed F7. So I'm going to grab all of this. Tends to use this same kind of selection as Word, where it tries to select too much. But we said insert and add new prompt, and in here there are a lot of different prompts. We've got cell reference for fully absolute, absolute column, relative row, and as you choose one of these, it will ask you, what do you want the description to be when the user interface pops up? So you're basically going to go in and say, tell me what the description is. That's going to go into this area here. It tags it with the correct type of reference so that when you select the cell, it will make it fully absolute, fully relative, or mixed as needed, okay? All of these tags that you have are context sensitive to the things that you can actually do, right? So we've got different components and, cell references, full row and column references, worksheet names. Qualified references means that you're actually qualifying the cell reference with the worksheet name as well. So it'll be worksheet name exclamation mark in the cell reference, named ranges, data model measures. If you're working with cube formulas and things like that, all of those are available. But the other thing that's important to know is we can also go, if we take a look at some of these things here, when we're tagging with Power Query, we have different options. So we can tag for Power Query insertions, Power Pivot Measure insertions, for Lambda functions, Python functions. All of these can be inserted into your workbooks. Some key things to understand about the licensing here. Anything formula-based, meaning formulas, lambdas, or Python, You can store in the database, and you can inject into the workbook on a free license. Anything else you can store in the database. That always works on a free license. Power queries and measures can be injected into workbook, but do require a pro license in order to inject them. If you don't have a pro license, though, what will happen is when you come into this interface, it will not say inject, it will say copy. So you will copy the code and you'll have to paste it manually. We just make it easier for our pro users. But where this becomes super useful is, check this out. I've got a nice little loaded pencil script here. I have a summary that I have here. This is a Power Query that I've copied. You'll notice that it's got a year 2009 and a specific location called the Squints. So that's one of my departments in my database. So I took this exact same query and built this version where I took the 2009 and I said, let's right click, add a new prompt and ask for a value. And I prompt it with enter a year. I also took my my location here and I right clicked and said, let's go add some text. And for the text, I said, enter a location. So when I now go and say inject, it comes back and says, what do you want to call this? Let's call this 2013 tax evader sales. We'll change this one to load to the data model. We'll make this 2013. We'll make the department tax evader. We're going to go and inject this. This is now going to go apply the query. And at that point, it should load it to the data model. And what we should get is a few rows of data that have been built. 15 rows in particular. If I go and take a look at it, this is what has actually been added into the data model at this point in time via Power Query. Why would I do this? Well, because I've built Power Query before. It's something that I need to reuse for multiple things. So there we go. I've got it stored inside my database so that I have access to it wherever I want it to go. Now, a couple things I want to call out on this one really, really quickly about things. Number one, I say I have this stored in my database wherever I want to go. And that's because my database, my Monkey Tools database, is stored inside my OneDrive folder, which syncs across every computer that I have. So every computer that I install Monkey Tools on has access to the synced database, which means when I open it up on my laptop, all of these things that I've stored are there ready for me to use. So as long as you store your database into a folder that syncs between computers, it does not matter if you're using OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, or anything else, it will sync. And as long as you've got your database pointed to the same place, it's going to work just nicely. The second thing that's really important, and this goes back to a comment that I think it was it Heather that made this comment before about saying that, yes, that, thank God the previous solutions that I had didn't die when I reverted to a free license. We don't leave any residual hooks in your workbook for Monkey Tools. All we did here was inject a Power Query. That's all we did. We just made your life easier by putting it in place here. There's nothing that relies on Monkey Tools in order to make this refresh. This is a tool that is targeted at you as a builder, not at trying to increase the license count in your organization. Okay, that's not my philosophy on things. I want my tool to be used by people who are using it. I don't want my tools to be required in order to be able to use solutions that are built by it. So any solution that is built with Monkey Tools will work on a computer that does not have Monkey Tools installed on it ever. Okay, so that's a really, really important thing. So it's not just for reference, Heather, it's not that your stuff reverted to a free license. You didn't even need Monkey Tools installed at all in order to be able to use that stuff. Now, where things would sort of break down for you is if you rely on some of the features that Monkey Tools brings. Well, that could potentially make things a little bit worse because some of these items get disabled when you don't have a pro license. Okay, so some of the key things to be aware of as we sort of look through some of these pieces here is that basically anything up to about this line works on a free version, but anything below this line requires a pro license. So if you get used to using some of these features, you will miss them once they're gone. Okay, so just something to be aware of in those cases here. Let me just open another one here and see. Yeah, you missed your sleuths. Yeah, fair enough. I can understand that. No, I don't want to go on this one here yet. That's not where I'm looking for. I just got to try and figure out which. You know what? I'm going to fall back to one of my old defaults here, and I'm going to walk you through a little bit of a modeling demo on what I do here. So let's see. We can try one more from one of my previous ones. Come on. Nope, that's also not the one I want. So we're going to go back to, like I say, a very default here. So we're going to go back to a simple table here that has some information in it. Okay. So what I have is I have 3 tables. These are officially Excel tables. We can see when we click on them, they have already been created. We have sales, we have categories, and we have budget. Okay. And we can also see if I go to Monkey Tools and I show my queries and connections. Again, this is the same button you have from Excel. I just have it on one tab. So I've got my manage data model, my show queries right next to each other. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go through the process of building a data model. And here's how it's going to start is I need to pull all of these queries into the data model, but I also like to follow my extract, transform, load method. I like to have a query for extract, a query for transform, a query for load is the methodology that I use. So we built this cool little monkey here. This is a pro feature, by the way, called Table Monkey. And what Table Monkey does is it goes and it gets me a list of all the tables in the workbook. There's some neat things that are built into this. If I go and click on this, you can see it selects the table. If I click on this one, it selects the table. If I click on this one, it selects the table. And I realize when I'm looking at this now that this one here is budget singular. Everything else is plural. So I actually want to fix this. So I'm just going to right click on it, go to the end and add an S and hit enter. And if I go and click on this one now, you can see in the table tab, this has already been updated to budget. So this is actually a tool that's just useful for making sure that my tables are named consistently. We have the ability to not import certain tables to the data model or bring them in. We can decrease or increase the number of staging levels that we want in this one. So this is the raw data table in the workbook. This is the first level of staging query. So this one will read from the table. This is the next level, which basically just references this guy here. And then this one, the green one, is what loads to the data model. If you turn this off, it means that this will load as a connection-only query. Okay, and that little legend is down in the bottom over here. I can say, look, I don't want this many levels of staging, Ken. Just take me directly from the workbook via Power Query into the data model. I can reduce those layers all at once. I've got some other options in this. I can even change the prefaces to what you might want here. We've got a couple of other options, but the main thing that I want to do here is, like I say, I want a query that's raw data. I want a next one that's staging, and I want then to load to the data model. In order to create this manually would probably take me a good 2 or 3 minutes at least to be able to go through and create each one of these because I have to do each one individually. The work is now done with Monkey Tools. Took like what, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. These tables are now all in the data model. Okay, so, and I can prove that because I can go and say manage data model, and here they are. Okay, nicely loaded in there. Away we go. So let me go and just move some stuff around here real quick. I'm not going to do everything I need to do in the data model, but I'm just going to make these relationships here. Okay. Now, the next thing that I need in order to do my reporting is I need a calendar table. Now, there's multiple ways of building a calendar table, but if you come to any of my courses, what I will do is I will advocate very hard for you that you need to use Power Query to do this. You shouldn't be building in Excel because with Power Query, I can make it always be up to date with your data. So we have a specific monkey for this called the calendar monkey. And the calendar monkey basically goes through, and you'll notice there's a query spinning down here. It analyzes your entire workbook with Power Query to come back and figure out what tables are there. And this is a full no-code experience to build a fully dynamic calendar table. We have the option to do 12-month, 445, 454, 13 fiscal periods. I'm going to go with 12 months, but I am going to go with a non-standard year end. I'm going to go with a September 30th year end. 2025, notice these are all 2018. That's okay. We just need a valid year end. You can call it, give it a name, change what you want it change where you want it to go to. You can even choose your language. So if you want your calendar in Finnish, you can absolutely do that. The first thing I need to do here, I need to choose where is the table that is going to have the earliest date ever. I'm going to pick that for my staging sales table from the date column. It tells me what columns are actually valid for this. Also, I'm going to grab my latest date ever from the budgets because my organization does tend to budget before sales happen, not after, unlike one of the ones I used to work with in the past. I'm now going to hit next. And at this point in time, because I'm using a non-standard fiscal period, it comes back and says, look, we've got some fiscal periods as well. Would you like me to add some of these columns in for, what is the fiscal year end start and end, things like that. I'm not going to do all those. I am going to add the fiscal year, the quarter of month. I'm going to add the month of fiscal year as well. These ones here are standard. They will show up in every calendar that you build. Interestingly enough, with the month names, you can shorten them down. The reason this is here is because in French, you need to be using 4 characters for month end. Otherwise, June and July become the same characters. In Finnish, you actually need to shorten from the end. You actually trim the end off of your calendar names, not the beginning. I learned this from one of my clients. So kind of neat stuff there. You can also shorten your day names down as well. Regardless, pick the columns you want. We'll say next. If you'd like to add relationships, providing the columns are unhidden, you can do so. If they are hidden, they'll be grayed out and there'll be a box up here that says, sorry, can't do it, because the Excel team doesn't give me an ability to do that. I'm now going to hit go. And what you can see is it's created my start date and end date queries. It's created my calendar for me with 1,096 rows. And it gives me some information here that I cannot do for you because Microsoft doesn't give me the APIs for this. So I need to go back, follow the advice there, which, by the way, you can keep that open at the same time. But if we go to data view, what it's basically saying is, look, you need to sort your month by month here. Actually, I'm not going to sort it there. I'm going to sort it by month of fiscal year. That's better. But my days I'll sort by the day of week. I really, really, really wish that I could actually do this part for you automatically, but unfortunately, it's not going to change. The other thing that I can't do, really wish I could, is hide the fields on the tables that should be hidden. But again, there's no API to do this. I have asked Microsoft for 15 years for this and keep getting told it's great feedback, but they're not investing in that area, which is frustrating. All right, we need one more thing. We need some measures. Now, writing measures is, for the basic measures, I'm going to do fairly easy, but it still takes time. So in this case here, we've got another no-code interface to be able to go through and say, hey, you know what, if I need a sales measure, maybe I want to, my sales amount will feed back your columns here. It will actually tell you from your columns which aggregations are supported. So if I go to count and whatnot, you'll notice we won't give you first date for a sales dollar value because they're not dates. If I go and pick up something like category, yeah, I totally agree with you, Heather. I have been asking and begging for years for these guys to make the default to hide the field on the menu side of the relationship. I had a massive argument with one of the program managers about it. He's retired now, but I haven't given up. But they're just not investing in Power Pivot, unfortunately. So it's frustrating. But anyway, notice this is a text-based field. So as soon as I do this, it won't let me sum it or average it or standard deviation it because that wouldn't be relevant. So we're giving you smart things here to build the DAX signature on a case-by-case basis. Having said that, that's all great, but this isn't a complicated measure to build. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make this faster. I'm going to go with multiple explicit measures. Our multiple explicit measures will look through your model and try and determine which are the tables that are most likely to have things you're going to want to aggregate. And these are the fields on the many side of the relationship, what we call linked fact tables. You can create a new measure table if you want to. I prefer to keep mine on the fact tables themselves, but you know what? If you do want a dedicated measure table, you can. There's a few other options here as well, but let me go and check this. We've got a couple of conflicts here, but what's happened? It's read through and said, here's your budgets table, here's your sales table. There's an amount column. You're probably going to want to sum that. You will have noticed, though, that there's also 2 other columns on this table. It didn't actually put these out, and that's because they're hidden. It said, well, you probably don't actually want them because they're foreign keys to another table. So within here, we have the ability to change our aggregations to things that are relevant. But you'll also notice we've got some color coding here. And that's because there's a conflict. This is the first one. This is all subsequent conflicts are shown in red. As soon as I change the name of this one, budget dollars, this one is no longer a conflict. I can call it sum of amounts if I want. That's a gross name though. So we'll call it sales dollars. Okay. You can change the format of this guy here. I'm going to go with currency with no decimal. Okay. I'll store this on budget and sales. I'm also going to add another aggregation. So what do I want to do? These are the 3 columns on the table. This is the name of the table itself. If I click the name of the table, there is only one aggregation that you can use for this. It's count rows. So this is going to be my transactions. It's going to be a whole number. Create. Boom. Done. That's nice and quick. And now let's go prove that it worked. We'll go over here, pivots and filters from data model. This is just the same as the insert pivot table from data model on another tab that you have to hunt down. But here we go. So I can now go and say, show me my transactions, my sales, my budgets. I can go and put, you know, let's see, for my categories, let's put category on rows. We'll put our class underneath that. Did I get that one the right way around? No, I did not. So let's put class above category. That's better. And maybe we want to go and have, I don't know, our fiscal year on columns or something like that to break things down here. And we can make changes, of course, however we like to do it. But the nice thing here is that I've been able to go and build a bunch of measures. So far, I've written a complete data model using Power Query and Power Pivot and DAX measures without writing a single line of code, which is kind of nice. And this is how I kind of think that the user interface should really be set up for a lot of these components here. Now, there's something missing from this table, though. But let's go and just add something here for a second. Let's go add a slicer. Let's filter into a specific year, and let's get rid of these totals here. We don't need those right now. So grand totals on for columns only. Whenever I have sales and budgets, the next thing that I always want is a variance. So let's add one. Right click, insert from BiblioMonkey, measure. I've got some variance and change measures. I've got one called variance dollars. So this is a pattern that I've set up in the past. It's going to be variance. I'm going to store it on my budgets table. The primary measure that I'm working with is sales. The secondary measure is budget. I'm going to inject it, and boom, there we go. We now have a nice DAX measure in place. What does it look like? Well, let's go take a look at what the pattern was first. So the variance and change is just this, right? It's sales minus budget, but I tagged it with a specific give me a measure here, this one right here. And then I gave it a description. Now, that's all cool and everything else. What does it end up looking like once it comes out the other end? Well, I chose the fields I wanted. And if we look at it, it looks like this, okay? Sales versus budget. Now, while we're looking at this, I just want to talk real quick about this one too, is, hey, you know, one of the things Heather said is I really miss my sleuths. This is our DAX sleuth. Our DAX sleuth actually does indentation. Now you can't see that here because of course nothing here is indented in this particular case here, but it also in our pro version has a nice little thing here where you can actually find where your measures are used. So this one is used on this particular pivot table. So this gives you some dependency tracing here. We can show our measures, how they're made up. This relies on sales and budget. So here's the dependency tree. For precedence, you can also flip this to go the other way to say, where are my sales used? Well, they're used in variance. Okay, so I've got some abilities to do some cool things there. Now, I am also going to do something different here as well. I'm going to show you a new feature that we have too. So we've got our sales dollars. But what I would like to do with this one here is I'm going to change up this pivot table a little bit. So I'm going to take the class and category off of this, and I'm going to put my sales on rows here. We're going to get rid of this one. So we've got our transactions, which I apparently did not spell correctly, transactions, okay? We've got our sales dollars here, but what I'd really like to do right now is I'd like to break this down by my beer, liquor, other. In order to do that, I would need to go and write multiple calculate statements. So we've just released a new dimension value measures. And so this is another monkey. I'm going to go and take my sales dollars as my primary measure. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a measure for each distinct value in my categories table for category. So these are the distinct values, beer, wine, burgers, and other. So it's going to write a pattern for each of them that looks like this. And if I want to click on this, you can see this would be wine, this would be burgers, this would be other. It's also giving you the name of what you have here. And you can configure this to be something different, right? We can go and say none on this. This is not going to work very well, but I could say other. I can get rid of the delimiter if I want to. I don't love this, but you know, I prefer to go with the measure name first. Sales dash, and then have the name of the column value itself. So sales other, we'll have a sales beer, sales wine, and so forth. I'm also going to add one more measure to show missing values. Okay, so this is just kind of an additional feature. If I now go and say, okay, notice that it's gone through and it's created the individual DAX measures for each of these things. Why this is important is because now I actually have one for each of these. I can also show my total sales next to it as well. So what was that final measure? You add that to the pivot table. It says all values have measures. Let me go back to my data for a second here. And let me go and add a new other No, let me go and add just spirits. And let me change one of these to spirits. I gotta try and spell it correctly. That's the important part. Data refresh all. Okay, so we're going to refresh all of our Power Queries, and if all goes well here, we should see something change over here. Oh, we shouldn't see an unhandled exception error. I'm going to have to work on that. There's a bug there apparently, but you'll notice that we don't have, this is basically telling me we don't have a measure to actually measure spirits in this particular case here. So I can't get Monkey Tools to automatically create things for you when you create a new measure, for example. But what I can do is that this particular measure will tell you, hey, there are measures that are missing from this. Obviously, this is something you're not going to have on your pivot table all the time. That's something that you would probably have on a different pivot table for error validation and whatnot. But it does give you a way to say, hey, these things are not kept in sync. You need to do an update for something. So again, it's not something I expect that you're going to use all the time to go and create these. But if you do need to go and create a nice simple set of measures to iterate across all the unique values there in a column, this is a great little tool that will actually make that happen for you nice and quick. And you can see here that we actually do have indentation that's actually taking place in this now inside our DAX sleuth as well. I should also mention, by the way, our query sleuth. We have a full query sleuth as well. If I go and take a look at calendar, for example, we can see the entire dependency tree that happens here, from raw data budgets to staging, all indented nicely, by the way, in a lot of cases. Not every case, there are some bugs in that I'm still trying to work through, but you can see all the M code that goes through this. We also even highlight that there's a precedent here in yellow of staging budgets, so you can see where they are. Again, you can flip this into dependency view and precedent views as well in order to sort of see some of the different things that are going on. So that's some of the cool features there. Yeah, what else can I tell you here? There's all kinds of good stuff in Power Query. I mean, I haven't even done everything here, but let me show you one other. Let me show you two other killer features before we sort of wrap this up for today. So one of the features in BiblioMonkey, and I know this is one that I'd worked on, and I know that Scott absolutely loves, is you can store all kinds of stuff in here, right? You can store your queries, you can store your measure patterns and whatnot inside this. You can store formulas and whatnot. But what if you want to share them with other people? And this is where we built a new feature inside our BiblioMonkey that allows you to export and import these things so that you can share them with other people. I should show you before you do this, though, one quick thing. If I want to add a new item into my BiblioMonkey from the current workbook, I can actually choose this from blank to from solution. And here we go. We've got all the queries that are inside this workbook. So I can actually now go and change the details up here, and I can go and say save, and this will actually save it into my database. So on a one-by-one basis, I can start importing these right from the workbook into the BiblioMonkey. We support, in this particular case, queries, measures, and Lambda functions we can bring in. I don't do formulas that way. You know, formulas we can do in other ways. But once we've actually done this, we also have the ability now to export. This will change our tree view into a nice little list here. So what I do for my self-service BI students is I have about 90 different DAX patterns that we use for different things. So I can now go through and say, look, I want to give them a bunch of these. I'm not interested in providing these guys here, though. So this will provide a whole bunch of different DAX patterns that you can see here for different things. And what I can do is I can now go and hit export. So if I go and export this, I'm just going to save this on my desktop for right now. I'll just call it measures. That's fine. It exports as an MTBM file. There we go. I'm not going to export anymore. What I can now do is I can go and say, let's go to BiblioMonkey, or sorry, not BiblioMonkey, my bad. Import, export, and import to BiblioMonkey. So right here, here's a measures.mtbm file. If I hit open, it will now load all these things into this little interface. I have the ability to, if it finds an item inside the database that conflicts with it, either create a new one, so we can have multiple versions with the same name, we can replace it, or we can ignore it. You've got some toggles to set, all one way or another. But the nice part about this is that if Scott builds something for his team and he says, oh, I've just realized that I need to make an update for it. Let's say, for argument's sake, that he goes back to BiblioMonkey, looks at this and says, this step should no longer be called change type. So I'm answering your question right here, Jeff. This is set data types. Set data types. I better change this one here to set data types as well. I'm going to update this. So that will work. And I can then go and inject it. Now, we don't give you IntelliSense here, though, Jeff, is the only thing. So you can write, as long as you write a query that works, you're fine. If you don't, it'll inject it for you, but then it's going to give you your errors, of course, right? So it's up to you to get the M code right. But let's say that Scott makes a change. He's edited this code right here, and he now wants to export it, and he wants to get all of his team to use the correct thing. Because Scott's got a pro license, he can go and export. This requires a pro license. He can export all of these things into a file. He can send it to his users. His users go import. Even though they're on free licenses, this will open up. If they leave everything with replace, they say import, it will overwrite those items in the database with the most recent version that Scott has provided them. So this is a great tool for making sure that you've got, one person who's authoring the library and distributing it to other people. They can now, share those back and forth. So we sort of follow what I would refer to as a slightly better licensing model than the Power BI side, because the Power BI side says if you're both the sharer and the sharee have to have a pro license. In my case, only the sharer needs to have, the exporter needs to have the pro license, the importer does not. Okay, so you can actually import these pieces over into somebody else's BiblioMonkey. So, okay, now that's a quote that I need, Scott. It started with free, but it upgraded to pro, and it paid for itself in less than a year. There you go. I mean, it's not expensive, right? It's only $99 US a year. On the other hand, if you go and you take one of my my SSBI course, it's free. So, comes with the subscription. So I don't know if there's anything else that people want to see specifically. There's a ton more inside Monkey Tools. There are so many things. I mean, we've already been going for an hour, and I could spend a lot more time with you as well on these things. But I mean, the biggest thing that I want to say is, I mean, there's a ton of things Monkey Tools will do. Let me just sort of wrap this up, because I want to be respectful of all of your time as well here. I just want to give a quick thing here. Just if you're looking to get your own monkey as well, you can visit Monkey Tools at monkeytools.ca. We have a website dedicated to our monkeys. There's a knowledge base there with a bunch of helpful articles. Oh, you want to see the slowly changing dimension? Okay, let me wrap this one up here, and I'll show you the slowly changing dimension one as well. Sure. You do get a free annual pro license Monkey Tools with a purchase of our SSBI Academy, and if you love it, we also have an affiliate program where we'll pay you if you promote it to other people as well. I also want to say this: there is a free Monkey Tools course as well. If you're interested in learning just about the features and what they do, and want to see even more, you can go and I don't know why that got so big, but there you go. You can hit that link. That'll give you the free Monkey Tools course at Skillwave, which will teach you about the different features. All right. Thomas has asked specifically about the slowly changing dimension 2 monkey. Let's go and take a look at SCD2. So I'm just going to close down a bunch of the things that I have in this case here. I want to get to a fresh instance of Excel on this one in order to load this one, because this one is kind of heavy as far as things go. So if you're not familiar with this particular problem, oh, sorry, Scott says he bought the lifetime version and paid for itself within a year. Okay, plainly, I need to increase the price of that one then. So there, I'm glad to hear that, though. Like, that's awesome. All right, so the fact that this opened with the query pane open is telling me that this did not restart Excel properly. Let me just make sure that Excel is actually truly recycled. This is what I was actually kind of worried about here. So bear with me 1 second here. And where am I? There it is. Yep, there was a hidden Excel running on my machine that was in a corrupted state. All right, cool. So here we go. Let me reopen this one now. And thank you, Scott. Yeah, I do like to try and listen to my users and their bug reports. I do try and respond and fix things. I definitely have a backlog of bugs and feature suggestions that I want to look at. What is going on? Are you serious? Bear with me for a second. I guess I got an update. Yeah. I just got so I run on the beta channel of Excel, so every now and then we get nice new features pushed our direction here. Yes, thank you. Okay, cool. I think we're back running properly here. All right, so here's the deal. If you're not familiar, so will this be on YouTube? I haven't been able to pay attention closely. Yes, I will be sharing the recording of this presentation on YouTube. What I would suggest, though, also, Jeff, is that if you really want to see all of the features, because I've only had a chance to go through some of them, check out the free course, honestly, because it's got a lot more that you can consume, and that way you'll have access to it on demand, whenever you want. And if there's new features there, I'll add those into the video as well. Okay, so. All right, so Thomas's question, the slowly changing dimension problem. So here's the issue that we have in this particular case. I have some nice data that is being refreshed, and I have a customers table. I'm going to show you what this data model looks like before I go any further here. We have a nice relationship between our builder ID on our sales table and builder ID on our builders table. And this is fine. This is a one-to-many relationship. And what that means is that as long as I have a unique list of customers in this table with their builder ID is always unique, when I refresh that data, everything is going to be fine, right? I can go in here and I can say, let's go and right click and refresh. And at this point in time, this should go through and it should retrieve its query, which is going to read from this particular table, and it'll write to the data model. Everything works fine. But then we run into an issue, because what happens with our people is that sometimes our customers move. So we add a new record to the table, and we've now got a conflict because Blanca has actually moved in with Nicholas here. So even though we want to keep Blanca's records around, we have two entries for this. So if I now go and try and refresh this, what happens is it's going to come back and it's going to give me an error message because we have to have unique values on one side of the table. Now, there is a long and complicated pattern in order to make all this stuff work, where we basically go and create a versioned key, 43.1, 43.2, running from an effective date from one side to another here. Okay, so I just need to check one thing around my, my data model query here, make sure that I haven't actually hidden a couple of columns off on this one. And I can see the important thing here is that I have my from and my to dates available inside my table. That's the critical part here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to walk you through, when I teach this inside the Self-Service BI Academy, by the way, I teach you the manual methods for doing this. It is almost an hour's worth of video to go through and actually explain the concepts, what we need to change, create the staging tables, and get everything working correctly. What I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to go and collapse some of these things down, and I'm going to leave my builders table showing here along with some other query stuff here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run what's called our SCD2 monkey. This is a pro monkey, okay? Now, you'll see that's going to pop open a query here because it's going to go and it's going to read some stuff around our data model. If your data is stored in SharePoint and you're pulling data from SharePoint, this can take some time because it does actually need to download the data. It's got a lot of work here. These monkeys have to do some heavy lifting to try and understand what's happening here. But what you're going to see is that once these monkeys are done, it's going to come back and it's going to present us with a user interface that says, hey, we've recognized that you have a slowly changing dimension problem, and maybe we can help you out. Now, the first part to understand about this is very colorful. But basically what it's saying is your primary key over here has a one-to-many relationship, but we've identified that you have a duplicate in this area. And what we need to do is we need to create a new versioned key that looks either like this or something different. There's two different ways to do this. If you do not have from and to date columns inside this original table, this next button will be grayed out. You have to fix that first, okay? But I'm going to hit next. Now, at this point, it says, great, okay, cool. We've identified that you already have a relationship that isn't working, and we believe that these are the fields that you're using. You should review them, okay? But in this case here, it's all good. It's worked them out correctly. If you are trying to build it up front, you can also just create a new one. If you know it's going to become a problem, you can create new and map your fields manually. I'm going to hit next. There are two different methods for a slowly changing type 2 dimension that we actually can work with. Now, if you come into my course, I'll teach you all these, but basically it's about using keys with or without meaning. I prefer with meaning for self-service BI people. Your pure BI specialists will tell you that you should not use with meaning, but that's because they're geeks that aren't really thinking about the auditability of things as much as the purity of data. Okay, we're going to support a maximum number of 1,000 changes here. You can make this bigger, but I'm going to suggest to you right now that if your slowly changing dimension needs to support 10,000 changes, you should really look at your data model because it's probably not a slowly changing dimension and the architecture should probably be reviewed. We can give you a name for things. I suggest one. We will fill the end dates. This is a requirement on this one here. This can be done based on today's date, which is usually sufficient, a query result, or the last date in a specific area. I'm going to go with today's date, and I'm going to hit create. Now remember, this process usually takes 45 minutes to teach, to an hour to teach, let alone retrofit and put into your own workbook. So if you're trying to retrofit this yourself, looking at an hour of instruction to go along with it, it's probably going to take you a good couple of hours to get this done. I should mention at this point that this is already done. It's finished. Okay. If you look, my builders table now has 51 rows, where before it only had 50 and it was failing to update. What's actually happened here, it has created a new link builder ID column in each table. It has made that the active link. The only thing my monkeys cannot do for you is right click and hide from client tools. And I have been asking for that since 2013. I really wish you could. But unfortunately, you can't. That part you have to do manually. But at this point in time, the entire dimensional model has been fixed. We actually provide you with the queries here. So these are the things that have actually changed. We add your staging for your surrogate key that you actually need for both the builders and the staging builders table, and we retrofit everything else into these particular queries. So we preserve the logic, and it just works. I'm assuming, Thomas, that that's probably makes sense enough. The sort of the context is how does it actually work? Rather than, I don't want to spend 45 minutes trying to teach you the logic behind what actually happens in it. But the one thing I will say is that if you want to understand what's happening there, these are just power queries. So again, back to the sort of the point that Heather made beforehand, you know what, if you send this to somebody who doesn't have monkey tools, all the steps are here, right? So you can walk through and see exactly what was done all the way along the way here. All of this actually is from the original query. All these ones that are S key, these are the things that I actually added into this, and the entire logic is preserved. I'm not trying to hide anything here. All I'm trying to do is make your life easier. And the important part for me on this one here is that that this just works when it gets sent to somebody who does not have that does not have monkey tools installed in their software. I work really hard to make it easy for people to not give me money, which is a really stupid thing to do, honestly, from a business perspective. But at the end of the day, I mean, I want buy-in from people who actually understand the worth of this thing as well. You know what, if you guys are interested, I'm going to, and this was going to be a short demo, I know. I'm going to do one more thing because I want to show you guys one more feature that a lot of people think is a killer feature in Monkey Tools as well. So bear with me. If you have to drop, that's all cool. You can always catch the rest of this on YouTube. But I do want to show you one more thing that I know what a lot of people love is a feature that we have, which is called the Time Sleuth. One of the things that's really challenging when you're working with Power Query is understanding that I don't care about uploading to SharePoint right now. Thank you. Just go away. So one of the things that's really complicated and really hard is understanding how to do Power Query performance. And there's no real good tools to sort of demonstrate how these things actually work. So what I want to show you right now is a tool that I've actually built in order to go and actually test performance. And if you follow Brian Julius et al., he actually talks about this particular feature a lot because this is how he tests Power Queries to see which one is more effective. And what you're going to notice here is that I have 5 queries in this particular case. They're all loading 2,000 rows of data, but they are all different methods of loading the same data into an output table. Okay. Essentially, what we're trying to do is we're trying to do an approximate match merge between 2 tables. Okay. So VLOOKUP with an approximate match. One of them uses this custom function called PQVLOOKUP, which is what I wrote up in the first version of M is for Data Monkey. I was trying to, and it was because the native user interface did not provide you a way to do an approximate match pattern. So I wrote up a function that replicated Excel's. As it turned out, it was horribly slow. So the original version of this is what we call unbuffered. Okay, I've written another version of it. It's just slightly different. Let me show you the difference. So here is the gross handwritten PQVLOOKUP statement. I don't expect you to read it, okay? But there we go. It'll do an approximate match, an exact match or whatnot. The unbuffered version of it looks like this. We have a lookup table. that we bring in as lookup source. We have our source table, which is data, and then we call our PQV lookup, and we pass those two things in. This one, as you're going to see, it runs horribly slow. There is a buffered version here where the only difference is we wrap the lookup table in table.buffer, so we're not polling it multiple times. Is the performance of that better? And the short answer is yes, it will be. But then one of my buddies came back and said, hey, you know what? I've got this new user interface driven way that works completely different. This is the pattern that I teach today. Let's go and see if we can build something that's faster by doing it through the user interface. And then just for grins, I thought, you know what? What if we load it to a table on a worksheet? We try loading the exact same thing to the data model, and we load something to both the data model and the worksheet. What will be the impact on performance? So Time Sleuth allows me to go through and find these queries, and I'm going to select all of them. If I go and do a detailed refresh, this will actually refresh each query individually and time them. If I do a standard refresh, it does a data refresh all. Okay, so now what you would expect, because it's refreshing as a batch, would generally be faster. But the main sort of purpose of this is to try and figure out which of these queries is taking the longest amount of time. So we try to do this individually so that we can actually identify as we're running them which is the longest. In addition, though, I'm also going to chart the variation across 5 trials. And I can also double the trials to compare privacy as well. What's the effect of privacy on or off? I'm not going to do that this time because I don't want this to take forever, but let's go and run this over 5 trials here. I'm also just going to ignore privacy on this one. We're going to do this one as fast as possible. And I'm going to run a detailed refresh across all of these. So what you can see here is we're running trial 1-1 at this point in time, and it's going to go and it's going to refresh each of these. So buffered takes 1.3 seconds, UI driven 0.35. This is the cumulative runtime of these things here as well. And you're going to get a pretty good idea really quickly as to which of these takes the longest when it's actually running. But here's the other thing. Power Query's calculation runs on a single core. And the problem with that is that as Power Query runs something, other things can be injected into the core process that slow it down. One of the primary culprits for slowing down your Power Query is a live Microsoft Teams meeting like we're doing right now that can make things slower. The problem is this process is highly variable. So what we do is we run multiple trials. I usually recommend 5. And we go and we take the averages of these things to try and figure out over enough trials, we should hopefully come down to something that is relatively approximate of what an average run should take. Okay, so there's a little bit of statistics going into this. Is 5 a significant sample size? Probably not. You should probably do about 30. But honestly, who wants to wait for 30, right? These ones are going pretty quick. If I double privacy on this, we could expect this to take probably another 3 to 4 minutes here. What we do at the end, though, is we come back and we say, cool, let's give you a chart. Because it's not enough to know these numbers. That's kind of an accounting thing to do. I want to be able to interpret them and understand what's going on. This is the original PQV lookup statement that I wrote for Memes for DataMonkey. It takes, on average, about 10.229 seconds to refresh. Okay. If you then go and look at the buffered version of it, it's actually pretty fast. Okay, runs really, really quickly. Now, again, remember, these both load to tables. This is the user interface driven way that we do everything through the user interface. We don't write any custom code whatsoever. And what you can see is that it refreshes super fast. The other thing, the X is the average, but the top and bottom of the box in the box and whisker chart, this is your variance that actually happens here. Notice that buffered, very little variance and very quick. UI driven, very little variance and faster than the custom code at all. But also notice the load destination you choose has an impact. Loading the table, fast. Loading the data model, not as fast. Loading to both data model and table, not surprising, but definitely takes longer than loading to just the data model or just the user interface. Now, with these things, again, multiple runs always expose different things, right? So I'm going to show you in this case here, this is just the buffered and UI driven versions. But in this case, I've also compared it with privacy checks active, which is your default. That's what you see in green here, as well as privacy off. When your privacy is on, look at how much variation this adds. But I mean, also keep in mind the scale, right? This is 4.5 seconds at the top. This is not huge. On the previous one here, we're talking 12 seconds at the top. This is much bigger, right? So when you look at this, like these ones are actually pretty fast. So if I were to go and say, look, you know what, let's take privacy on out of the equation here. 1 second, less than 1 second on average to refresh the buffered, 0.2 seconds on average to get the UI driven. So which one's faster? Well, obviously the user interface driven, less variance and faster overall. Let's bring in unbuffered. Holy cow, now we're talking 16 seconds here. If we then go and say, let's add back in what it does with privacy on, privacy definitely has a significant impact and slows things down. Of course, we don't want to turn off privacy unless we know all of the data is in the organization's firewall, right? But at the end of the day, you can see that there's a significant lift to running without privacy checks enabled. But you're unbuffered, holy cow, is that slow. This one here, I've done everything. UI-driven compound is actually our worst offender for variation. This one is huge. So this is loading to the data model and tables on these ones. The other thing that I will mention is, as much as we have made an effort to try and actually suppress this from happening, the very first run that goes through the time sleuth does generally take longer. So if you want to get an accurate one, you could debate that taking that first run out would give you a more accurate piece. On the other hand, we can also say that most of the time you're not doing multiple runs. So yeah, you'd think that writing to the sheet would be slower, eh? Absolutely. But you know what? The Excel calc engine is actually pretty darn fast. So there you go. It's interesting. I mean, it depends on the size and scale, right? Like when you look at what's happening with these ones, these are 2,000 row tables. And you know, that's not huge, right? But the data model is faster to consume. But when loading into the data model, it also has to be parsed through the compression algorithm and encoded using the compression algorithm in order to store the data. So that has some overhead. Having said that, when you're actually retrieving your data from your table or from your data model into your pivot table, that goes really fast. So, you know, not all time is created equal, right? So where do I use this? I use this when somebody goes and posts on LinkedIn, when I'll go and post a solution using a user interface driven method to do something, and then somebody comes along on LinkedIn and they literally just barf M code at me with no explanation. And it's like, what are you trying to prove here? So I'll take their code, compare it to mine, and usually find that the user interface driven method that I'm using is faster. And this is the kind of thing that I always like to test, because while I think it's awesome that people can write complicated code, the reality here is that Power Query actually does a really good job on optimizing a lot of things. The other thing is, if I have a massive workbook that has a lot of Power Queries in it and the refresh is taking a long time, when I break it down this way, I can usually try and isolate, or I can usually isolate which query is taking the longest amount of time. So if there is one that needs to be optimized, I can identify which it is. Doesn't help me optimize it, but at least it helps me identify which one is the problem, right? So, and sometimes that can be a pretty big surprise. So anyway, so that's one of the other killer functions that happens inside Monkey Tools. The biggest thing that you need to know about this, the data must load somewhere. So if you notice here, there were 5 queries here. Look up data and the function. If I go into time sleuth, those ones will not be showing because I can't time a connection only query. I can only test a query that loads somewhere. Okay. So yeah, there's another killer function for you. But like I say, I mean, there's all kinds of incredible stuff that happens inside Monkey Tools. When you take a look at the list of the features that we've actually, oh, hang on a second, that's not what I wanted here. Let me escape that one. I want to go all the way back and just compare real quick here. This one here. When we look at this, I mean, we've looked at this one here. We've looked at this one here. We've looked at this one here. We looked at this one here. I've looked at Table Monkey, Calendar Monkey, SCD2 Monkey. I've looked at some of the sleuths here for Query Sleuth and Time Sleuth. But there's a lot of things that we haven't covered in this, right? Import from Power BI models, from Power BI desktop files back into Excel to recreate those models. I haven't looked at that. But what I will suggest on this one is I'll point you to the free course for that in order to sort of, you know, take a look at some of the different features that you have there. So let me just, hang on, back up. There we go to this area here. They're all you know, sort of listed there. So at that point, I think I'm probably going to stop for today. Thank you for coming. Thanks for sticking around. I hope that you've seen some cool things in this. If you haven't used Monkey Tools before, you know, definitely check out the add-in. Try the Pro license before you commit to buying. Then you'll know if it installs without issue, if you're finding use from it and whatnot. Check out the free course. That'll teach you how to use things, particularly the BiblioMonkey and some of the other things, and help you, you know, discover some undiscovered gems there, because this tool is constantly evolving, has been for multiple years now, and will continue to do so because it's kind of a passion of mine. So, so there you go. Thanks everyone for coming. I will, hopefully we'll see you again in future. So, any last thoughts or questions? Don't hesitate to drop them in the chat. But and I think I'll leave you with one more slide on this one here. This is just some of the, that one, thanks. Just some of the different places you can actually find me and connect with me on social media. So outside of that, thanks so much for coming. We'll see y'all next time. Don't forget, the next meetups are available for signing up. And thanks once again to Joseph for doing our What's New in Power BI to get us kicked off on this one. And I appreciate you all taking the time to hang out with me. We'll see you next time.